Diophantus is sometimes called the father of algebra. He was the first to use symbols to express unknown amounts, and he developed an abbreviation for equals. And this was really the first step away from verbal algebra to symbolic algebra that we use today. And Hypatia, she's known as the first female mathematician, and she extended the work of Diophantus with equations. In a previous episode about patterns, I stepped through 8 experiences that students should encounter as a foundation for algebra. Now, formal algebra begins when students can see consistent change and make generalizations. And that is essentially the 8th step in that developmental sequence. In this first episode of this series, I'm going to define the meaning of algebra. But before we do that, let's look at some of the big ideas that are generally taught in elementary school or primary school, as we call it here in Australia. Many mathematical concepts in elementary grades are based on algebraic thinking. For example, a good curriculum will use a pan balance with cubes like this to introduce the idea of equivalence, like in the first year of school. Moving forward, students can represent pictures like pan balances and cubes using symbols in equations. And eventually they can start looking for patterns as the variables on each side of the pan balance are changed. Work with equivalence and equations also involves inequality. For example, look at this picture of a pan balance. What generalizations can you make from it? They also see and use relationships between operations. For example, as this diagram shows you, subtraction will undo addition and vice versa. And the same is true for multiplication and division. Further down the track, they will apply rules to generate input or output data. With this particular chart, the rule is add 5. But if there is no rule, they have to look at the numbers, study a pattern, and generate a rule. From these few examples, we can formulate a simple definition of algebra. Algebra is a way of thinking. It's a way of using quantities, symbols, and rules to help us describe and analyze patterns and relationships. It helps us solve problems when we don't yet know all the numbers. It will help us find the missing information and to understand how things change and to make predictions. And from this simple definition, I can see why algebra is often described as having 2 big ideas: equivalence and equations and functions. In the next episode, I'll show you why we use pan balances to represent equivalence and equations, and that'll be specifically with addition and subtraction. I'll need another episode to show you how we do that with multiplication and its inverse operation of division. I'll also introduce you to a convention and a common misconception that many teachers have about that convention. But before I can do any of that, I need to have a conversation about static problems, as they provide the context for exploring equivalence. The second big idea is functions. In another episode, we'll explore active problems and how they provide the context for exploring that idea. We'll look at input and output tables that involve rules or functions. And we'll explore activities where the students are given the rule and an input and they have to generate the output number. Or they're given the rule and the output and they have to backtrack that function, that rule, to generate the input data. And sometimes they're given the input and output data and they have to generalize the rule, like this example that's shown now. I'll also show how these tables generate ordered pairs that allow us to graph the data. And finally, I want you to apply some of these understandings to develop your algebraic thinking skills, which I'll explore later in the series. So this is what I want you to do. 1, remember that algebra has 2 big ideas: equivalence and equations and functions. And 2, I want you to tackle this algebraic thinking problem. Don't worry about if you can't do it just yet, but do try, because that will better prepare us for the discussions we're going to have in future episodes. I've also provided it in the link below. And finally, as always, if you've seen value in this episode, please give it a thumbs up and share the video. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss another episode or learning opportunity with me. See you next time.